because of this article they put out, which says that Eid celebration can be lonely for Muslim reverts. That has now been edited on this idea that Muslims believe we're all naturally born Muslim, and that anyone who converts is actually reverting because we're born that way.
Did you know the BBC just suggested everyone is born Muslim? In an article about Eid, they referred to converts as reverts, implying people who join Islam are simply returning to their original faith. This isn't some minor slip-up. The term reverts carries a theological claim that directly contradicts the beliefs of Christians, Jews, Hindus, and atheists. It's as if the national broadcaster has taken a controversial religious position and presented it as fact. And you're paying for this with your license fee. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Let's dive into what exactly the BBC did that sparked such controversy. In an article about Eid celebrations, our national broadcaster casually slipped in the term reverts instead of converts when referring to people who had embraced Islam.
Was this genuinely just a typo, or did the BBC do this on purpose? I would be a convert, not a revert, no matter what some Muslims believe.
Now, this wasn't buried in some obscure opinion piece or religious commentary. It appeared in straightforward news reporting, presented as if it were simple factual language. But there's nothing simple about this terminology choice at all. The use of revert instead of convert carries profound theological weight. It's not just a matter of vocabulary, it's a direct assertion of a specific religious belief. This term stems from the Islamic concept of fitra, which holds that all humans are born in a natural state of submission to Allah. According to this belief, when someone embraces Islam, they aren't converting to something new, but returning, or reverting, to their original innate faith. Consider what this implies for the rest of us. For Christians who believe in original sin, Jews who understand themselves as part of a covenant with God, or atheists who reject all religious frameworks, the BBC essentially broadcasted that their entire worldview is secondary or derivative.
Because of this article they put out, which says that Eid celebration can be lonely for Muslim reverts. That has now been edited on this idea that Muslims believe we're all naturally born Muslim, and that anyone who converts is actually reverting because we're born that way.
It's as if our publicly funded broadcaster decided that one particular theology trumps all others. Dr. Paul Stock from Policy Exchange didn't mince words, describing this as effectively promoting a supremacist ideology. Imagine the uproar if the BBC had described people becoming Christians as finally seeing the light, or those embracing atheism as at last thinking rationally. The double standard is glaring. What's particularly telling is the BBC's response when called out. Instead of directly addressing the error, they reportedly edited the article multiple times.
Them converts instead. Why? Because everyone has gone completely insane about them using the term revert. It's claiming we're all originally Muslim, and those who convert are rediscovering their faith.
At least 3 separate revisions, without ever acknowledging the fundamental problem or offering any explanation. This lack of transparency only deepened the controversy. Even after multiple chances to correct course, they seemed unable to grasp why presenting a contested theological position as objective fact might be problematic. This isn't about being overly sensitive or political correctness gone mad. It's about a fundamental breach of journalistic principles from an organisation funded by all British taxpayers. When the BBC casually presents one religion's theological claim as uncontested fact, they're not just making a linguistic slip, they're enforcing a hierarchy of beliefs that places Islam as the default human condition and other faiths as deviations from that norm.
And he says this sectarianism has no place on the BBC. Calling converts reverts is ideology, not fact. That is Islamist propaganda and has no place on the BBC. So pretty strong words there from Tom Tugendhat.
Such a public breach of journalistic impartiality shouldn't happen at an organisation with the BBC's resources, yet it did. While most coverage focused on the terminology itself, the more revealing story lies hidden in the BBC's response. 3 silent edits without acknowledgement, suggesting a broadcaster increasingly disconnected from the public it claims to serve. This pattern of directional bias reveals a troubling truth about how far our national broadcaster has drifted from its founding principles. What's particularly concerning isn't just that this error occurred, but that it passed through multiple editorial checkpoints without raising red flags. An organisation employing thousands of journalists, editors and fact-checkers somehow failed to recognise they were presenting a specific religious doctrine as undisputed fact. This suggests something more systematic than a simple oversight. It points to a fundamental blind spot in the BBC's worldview. Dr. Paul Stock from Policy Exchange has identified a troubling pattern in the BBC's reporting. These aren't random errors distributed evenly across different perspectives, but mistakes that consistently lean in one direction. This directional bias suggests the problem isn't just about editorial standards, but about which viewpoints receive scrutiny and which are accepted without question. The irony is particularly stark when we consider the BBC's substantial investment in diversity initiatives. Despite these efforts, they appear remarkably tone-deaf when representing traditional or conservative perspectives. It's as if diversity of appearance has been prioritised over diversity of thought. While the corporation proudly showcases its external diversity credentials, it seems increasingly uniform in its internal thinking. What does this suggest about the BBC's connection to its audience? The broadcaster appears increasingly detached from significant portions of the British public, particularly those with traditional or faith-based perspectives. When millions of licence fee payers find their deeply held beliefs casually dismissed by their national broadcaster, the fundamental compact between the BBC and its audience begins to fracture. The corporation's reluctance to directly address this controversy only compounds the problem. Instead of acknowledging the theological implications of their language choice, they opted for silent edits without explanation. This lack of transparency further erodes public trust and reinforces the perception that the BBC doesn't fully understand, or perhaps doesn't care about, the concerns of many who fund its operations. What we've seen with the reverts controversy isn't just a slip of the editorial pen, it's a symptom of institutional rot at the heart of our national broadcaster. The BBC, once a beacon of balanced reporting, now regularly demonstrates an alarming disconnect from the very public it's meant to serve. This pattern of editorial missteps raises fundamental questions about the BBC's capacity to reflect diverse viewpoints. As Dr. Paul Stock noted, these aren't random errors but reveal a systematic bias that undermines public trust. The licence fee payers deserve better. Until the BBC confronts its internal biases head-on, its credibility will continue to crumble, not through dramatic implosion, but through the slow erosion of public confidence.